On today's podcast, I'll be talking about perpetual dieting and constant dieting and how in the long run, this is actually going to really set you up for not only a bad metabolic place, but probably long-term fat gain. So let's get into it. Thanks for tuning into another episode. So what we'll be talking about today is the fact that so many people are constantly perpetually dieting. So basically what they're doing is they might have a point where they want to diet for, say, a holiday or a show or whatever it is, and they're in a deficit for maybe a 10, 12, 14, 16 week period, which is generally the case. So let's say, for example, you look at the course of a year. Now, within that year, you have, say, a show and you're competing in March, and you do your show and then you start a reverse diet process. Now, you might reverse diet for maybe a month or two, and then you're like, okay, I've got a holiday in Bali to go to. I'm going overseas in June. So that leaves us with competing in March and then stepping off stage and pretty much reversing for about 4 to 6 weeks. So what can be expected in like a 4 to 6 week reverse diet? Really not a lot. So if your length of dieting was, say, 12 to 16 weeks for that show and your reverse is only 6, you're really doing like half the time in a reverse to what you were in a caloric deficit, meaning that your body has less time in a rebuilding stage than what it had in an aggressive deficit stage, which means that ultimately coming out of that reverse diet, you're not going to be in a better position than what you were going in. You're going to be in a worse position. So say you then cut for, 3-4 weeks mini cut before you go on holidays. Again, you're chipping away calorically back to probably where you were comp prep wise, because you haven't had any time to actually bring up your calories. You then get back from your holiday and you've probably gained weight because you weren't sticking to your macros when you were away, say for 3 or 4 weeks. And then you get back and you've put on a lot of weight, a lot more than what you thought you could for a 3 or 4 week holiday. You've gained 3 to 4 kilos and you're like, shit, okay, I need to diet again. I just want to get that little bit of holiday weight off. So then you cut for another 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks to get that 3 or 4 kilos off. It was quite hard this time. It became really difficult and you didn't understand why it was so hard to get that little bit of extra fat off when you were so lean for your comp. So now your calories are even lower than what they were coming into your show, and you're doing a lot of cardio. You're still pretty much doing everything you were for that comp phase. And you've now dieted to around about the point of, so say holiday, June, July, dieted for August, September to get your weight back down to where you wanted it. And then you're like, okay, I'll start the reverse dieting process again. So you start reverse dieting around September. And then what happens? If you live in Australia, we're coming into summer. So you're like, okay, well, I don't want to have extra weight gain over summer, but your calories are still really low. Your cardio is still quite high. You're still coming out of that slowly. So we might be looking at now December, and we've had September, October, maybe part of November. So maybe 2-3 months now, we're talking like 8-10 weeks of doing a reverse. But during that time, your body hasn't responded well. You've maybe gained a little bit of weight, and that wasn't your ultimate goal. So we're now in a position where you're looking at summer and going, oh, now I want to go back into a deficit again. And then you go back into that deficit again, and what's going to happen? You're going to have to drop your calories more. You're going to have to keep your cardio up. And then you consider the thought of getting back on stage in March, which again means you might have a 2-week, 3-week, even maybe max 4-week reverse diet period now before you have to prep again for March. So if you think about that over the course of a year, that is a lot. That is a lot of dieting. That is a lot of deficits. That is not a long period of time in the reverse diet sense. If you look at the course of a year, so say a year is, don't even know how many weeks are in a year, 52 weeks in a year. You maybe have spent 32 of those weeks in a deficit and maybe 20 of those in a reverse diet period, and maybe a few weeks in there where you're a bit YOLO and you weren't even, tracking or anything like that. You were just eating whatever you wanted. So you're spending more of your year in a deficit than what you are in a caloric surplus, meaning that your metabolism over that period of time is going to become downregulated. And this is why people sometimes say the more they diet, the harder the process becomes. The more cardio they have to do, the lower they have to go with their calories. All of these things, when the whole point of reverse dieting is to try to build your metabolism so that you don't have to diet on as excessively low calories, or if you want to drop a couple of kilos, you don't have to go through so much hardship to get there, and it's not going to be as difficult. Now, the problem and why people are running into problems with reverse dieting is they're not allowing enough time in a reverse diet period, or they're not allowing enough time in the caloric surplus for their body to actually start to adjust to having more food and being able to sustain weight on a new caloric intake. Now, reverse dieting, the whole goal is to obviously increase your metabolic capacity, so allow you to intake more food and not gain weight, or maybe only gain small amounts of weight or even muscle mass in that reverse diet period. Now, the perfect reverse diet would be one where you gain muscle mass, your weight goes up, but it's predominantly muscle, you're not putting on a load of fat. That will be the optimal reverse diet. Now, in saying that, I have some clients who respond really well to a reverse diet. They actually sometimes even drop weight. I've had some clients before that gained fat very, very quickly, and we have to kind of pull it back a bit at that point. So what I'm trying to explain to you is that reverse dieting is going to be an individual experience. Generally speaking, the more sensitive your metabolism has been in a dietary phase, the more that you're probably going to have to be a little slower with the reverse diet process. But then at the same time, if you're not aggressive enough, it's not actually going to shock your body enough to make a change and start to respond to that intake. So I've done it a couple of different ways in the past. I've gone down the route of going very slow and steadily and trialed that with clients and seen the response and read some research on that. And then I've also tried it the other way, where I've got a bit more aggressive and pushed some calories in fast, pulled the cardio back, and then just stayed on that amount for a couple of weeks and let their body kind of play catch up to that. So what will tend to happen with the second one is that they'll gain weight maybe in the first week, and then the weight will kind of stabilize for the next few weeks. Now, the big difference in terms of weight gain, obviously everyone says you want to minimize fat gain, but at the end of the day, with reverse dieting or coming out of a diet, you need to look at something that's sustainable for the client. And let's say, for example, you've been dieting and your calories got down to maybe 1,400, which is, reasonably low for a woman, especially if you're doing a bit of training and cardio. Not saying that you won't get there. Some people will have to go that low to, make changes even lower than that, 1,000, 1,200, not encouraging it long term, but I'm saying that's might be where you end up at the end of a deficit period. So let's say, for example, you end up there. And then the general train of thought is people say, okay, you're going to add about 50 to 100 calories a week in a reverse diet period. So if you're down as low as like 1,200 calories and you're going to slowly come out of that reverse, say at 50 calories a week, it's going to take you like 8 weeks to come up 400 calories, which will only bring you to 1,600, which is not a lot. And like I said, if you're someone that's then doing mini cuts here and there and all of that, your calories are really never getting a chance to come up to a better metabolic place. So what I would tend to do with a client like that is get a bit more aggressive, bring them back to more a maintenance level for where they should be at. So not their current maintenance, but where their current maintenance is based on the fact that they've been dieting, the fact that they've had metabolic downregulation. So we might bring them down to somewhere like, might bring them up to somewhere like 1,600 and just go boom, straight from there, and see what happens over the course of a month, and monitor it based on weight, how they're feeling, all of that. So they might gain a kilo, maybe 1.5 kilos in the first week, and a lot of that's going to be water weight. It's not just going to be like fat gain overnight like that. And then I'll see what happens the next week. If their weight then stabilizes, that is fantastic. They're now eating 1,600 calories, which could have taken them 8 weeks to get there if we did a slower reverse diet, and their body's maintaining. They've gained that initial bit of fat, but then their body's kind of holding tight there. Whereas maybe if you do it over an 8-week period, you might have, say, a 2 kilo fat gain over that 8 weeks, but it's slow and steady. So what really mentally for a client is going to be easier for them to stick to? If they've been in a deficit and then you're only adding 50 calories as a reverse diet or 100 calories, it doesn't really feel like you've stopped dieting, which is a big one for people, especially competitors. If you've been on so low for so long and then you get off stage, your body's going to want to eat. Your leptin's going to be changing. All of these hormones are going to be affecting you, and you're going to have cravings. And I found that when you're too strict in the reverse diet period with a client, they will often binge eat. They will often go a bit YOLO. And by strict, what I mean is strict in the increase of calories, not strict in terms of compliancy. I believe that they need to be compliant in a reverse diet process. Otherwise, that's when they will have body fat overshooting, weight gain, all of those things. So what I mean by that is mentally for someone, is it going to be better for them to get off stage on their 1200 calories and jump up to 1600 and pull back on cardio a little bit? Is that going to be easier to maintain than what it's going to be to add 50 calories a week and keep training really hard and keep trying to keep really, really lean? Now, another reason that I like to go more aggressive is from the point of view of just how you're feeling. Now, when you're on, say, 1200 calories, you have a fair bit of lean tissue and you're doing a lot of cardio, you're going to be feeling pretty average at that point. You're pretty tired, fatigued, all of that. Your body is working hard to keep that muscle mass there, keep you going. So for me, it comes down to how they're feeling. Another big one is libido. They'll have no sex drive, their sex hormones are reducing. So a good idea would be just then in that instance, I would be asking my client how they feel. If they are feeling like shit, then there is more of a reason to push some calories in and really bump them up for even a month post-comp, and then see how they're going after that. Now, I have talked a lot about competing here. This is not just for competitors. This is for anyone in a deficit or in a dietary phase. It's so important that you look at what you can do compliancy wise, and then also how you're feeling within your body. So for example, when I run 8 or 10 week or 12 week challenges or whatever it is, I will tend to the week post really bring their calories up a fair bit more, and then chat to them about their goals and see where we want to go to from there. Because at the end of the day, whether you're in a caloric deficit for a comp or for a lifestyle, for a holiday, for a photo shoot, whatever it is, it's so important to have a plan after that so that you know where you're going to go. And if your goal is doing mini cuts all the time and little diets here and there throughout a year, you're really not going to get anywhere in terms of metabolism wise, and probably also muscle gain wise. So if you're happy living on, 1400 calories and doing cardio a fair bit to maintain that amount, then that is absolutely fine. I don't encourage it because I don't think that it's going to be healthy long term. I've seen the effects of that, and generally over time what will happen is your basal metabolic rate will just keep declining. And I've been working with clients who are now in, say, their late 30s and early 40s, which is not that old by any means, but that have been yo-yo dieting for years. And they're now maintaining, 80, 90, 100 kilo body weights for females with not a lot of muscle mass, and on 1,000 calories, on 1,200 calories. And people are like, well, how does that work? Don't you believe in energy in, energy out? Of course, but then metabolic downregulation does occur. I'm not going to say metabolic damage, but metabolic downregulation does occur. So that's something that we need to remember as well. So what can you do? If you have a client, so I have a client, I've got a few at the moment through my 8-week challenge, through things that I'm doing, and they've come in, to an 8-week challenge and they're wanting to lose fat. So let's say, for example, they're 100 kilos and they're maybe 35, 40, maybe even more % body fat. So they've got a lot of body fat on them. And then when I get them to do a food diary, they're only eating 1,000 calories or 1,200 calories. And you're thinking, how is this person maintaining 100 kilos on only 1,000 or 1,200 calories? Maybe they're not super active, but just even on that kind of caloric intake, there is no reason why their weight should be at that point. So obviously they're having problems in terms of hormones, metabolic downregulation, all of that is going on in their body. There's no reason why someone that is moderately active should be able to maintain such a high weight on that and such a high level of body fat. So they're the trickier ones. In that situation, if they're coming in to, say, do a challenge with me, it's actually a lot harder for them because we've got nowhere to go. We've got, say, an 8-week challenge and they want to drop body fat, but they're in such a messed up metabolic place that it's going to take me, I would chat to them. They've probably been dieting for 20 years. How is in 8 weeks are you going to be able to not only reverse diet them and bring their metabolism back up, but also have them drop fat and body recomposition? It's just going to be near to impossible. And this is a big reason why I've kind of decided that I'm not doing challenges anymore. I'm not doing quick fix challenges. Not that I've been about quick fix ones, but even 8 weeks is just not long enough to work with someone, unless they're in a really good metabolic place. So that's why I'm all about, running systems and programs and month by month coaching and having minimums of 12 weeks to work with people. because I don't think people should go to a coach and think they're going to work with them for 6-8 weeks and get the results that they want. It's just not going to happen unless you don't want to eat anything and you want to train a lot, or like I said before, unless you're in a really good place. So say you're 18, 19, getting into the fitness industry and you want to follow some kind of meal plan, some kind of training program for 8 weeks, you'll probably get pretty good results. But if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s and you've tried every diet under the sun, even your late 20s, and you've been beating your body up with diets on and off for all of these years, it's going to take a bit of time, unfortunately, to get you to a good place, unless you want to live on, 1,000, 1,200 calories for the rest of your life, which nobody does. And from a hormonal point of view, it's really not a good position to be in as a female as well. If you ever want to have kids, or just in terms of sex drive, libido, hair, thin skin, nails, all of that's going to be affected by living on low calories. So where am I going with this rambling? Basically, I'm trying to say that, unfortunately, and no one's going to want to hear this, but you need to be patient. You need to also understand that it's okay to carry an extra bit of body fat. And what I kind of say to a few of my clients sometimes is, we've got to look at the short-term sacrifice for the long-term gain. So if you think about it this way, let's say, for example, you are around 70, 75 kilos as a female, but you're carrying a fair bit of body fat. You're reasonably short. You might be carrying 25, 30% body fat. You're uncomfortable at that weight, but you're sort of maintaining that on very low calories. You're scared of putting on fat. You obviously want to be leaner than that, but you know you can't live on your calories being that low forever, which is very, very common. So where do you go to from there? So with that client, I try to explain to them that we're going to have some short-term loss for some long-term success. And what I mean by that is you might have to go up on the scales, maybe 2, 3, 4, even 5 kilos, for us then to be in a better position to then, adjust things. And that doesn't always happen. Sometimes when you reverse diet, people will stay the same weight or only go up a tiny bit or drop down, like I said before. But often you have to sacrifice maybe putting on a little bit of weight for a couple of months, or even just maintaining your weight. But then you're going to set yourself up to be in such a better position for fat loss long term. So for example, like I'm running a new a system which is over 6 months. And I still believe in 6 months you can make a big difference. So, within that program, we're doing a couple of months reverse dieting, 2-3 months in a reverse diet process, and changing training, changing cardio, all of that, and setting the people up into a really good place. And then the last couple of months, we're going to push for some fat loss. But then even when they get to the end of that 6 months, I've set them up now where they know what they have to do going forward. So if they want to lose more fat after the end of that small cut at the end, then they can keep going. And if they want to then get to a point of maintenance and then learn how to build their calories slowly while maintaining their weight, then we've set them up for all of that. But I don't believe in a 4, 6, 8 week challenge is going to be able to do all of that if you're someone that has struggled metabolically with having to always be on a diet. And I just think that it's just this vicious cycle that we see all the time. Everyone just wants that quick fix. And you've got to think about what that quick fix is doing long term. Is it actually going to just keep beating your metabolism up more and more and more? Or is it going to improve how you feel? And in 4 weeks, you might drop 1-2 kilos max. Now, is that 1 or 2 kilos worth bringing your calories down so low for, or overtraining for, all of this? And I just think, like, as women, we have to stop being so hard on ourselves in terms of how we look in the mirror. Like, honestly, putting on a couple of kilos for a couple of months to improve your metabolism, improve your health, improve your relationship with food, relationship with your partner, everything going on in your life for a couple of months of a few kilos of fat gain. If you've already been living with excess fat for the last 20 years, what is a couple of months going to matter? And I think people have this big fear of gaining a little bit of weight for some long-term success. For the last couple of years for me, I've been in a period of increasing my calories because I've really wanted to get my hormones back to a positive place. And now that I'm in that place, I can again start going a bit more aggressive with the deficit. But at the same time, I know my body, and I know because of my background with so much sport that I'm always going to probably have to do a little bit of cardio to lose fat. And that's just my body type. Some people are lucky enough to, not have to do that. Everyone's different. But we want to have the ultimate goal of being able to get our bodies in a position where they are more primed for fat loss without having to overtrain, without having to do 100 million things, or so have no carbs and no fats and drop ultra low with their calories. So I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this rambling is, and stop focusing on worrying about a couple of kilos of fat gain when at the end of the day you might be damaging your long-term health. And the other big one that I like to look at from this point of view is, I'll probably get hate because I'm not a mum, but I work with a lot of mums and I want to be a mum myself one day. And I always look at it from this point of view of being a role model. And I think you can, say that as well if you're a personal trainer listening to this. If you're wanting to be a role model for women or a role model for your children or a role model for people, and you're constantly in a deficit and everyone knows you as that person that's always on a diet, it's just not really a healthy place to be in long term. So if you want to break that cycle and get out of it, it's really important to maybe have some short-term losses for that long-term success. And you don't want to be, the mum that their kid goes to school and they ask what they had for dinner last night and they're like, oh, I had my food, but mum had her diet food. Like, you don't want to have to be that rigid with your eating that you can't even eat a meal with your family or go out in social situations and all of these sort of things. You need to find a way of creating some more, as much as I hate the word, but balance, and creating some more happiness within food and your relationship with food, your family, all of that, so that you're not that person that is always so obsessed with food in social settings. So think about that in terms of dieting. If you're always dieting and the process is always harder, each time you try to lose fat, it's probably because you're beating the shit out of your metabolism. You're beating the crap out of your body. You need to stop being so harsh to it and start being a bit nicer to it, and really focusing on bringing your calories up for a while, not being scared to do so. Some people actually drop weight when they do it because their body's like, thank God you're feeding me again. Especially I find people that have been on low calorie intakes for very long periods of time, like we're talking like 5, 10, 20 years. They tend to respond really well with chunking their calories up a fair bit to start. And again, when I say chunking your calories up, I mean good food. I don't mean you're just going to go eat shit to get extra calories in. It might mean just like doubling the portion of your breakfast or lunch or whatever it is of the similar foods you're having. And it might also mean just dispersing your macronutrients a bit better. So where you're having the majority of your carbs, the majority of your fats, having protein at all your meals, that sort of thing. It's not just about just throwing in food here and there. There's going to be an actual structure to it. So stop beating your bodies up. Stop being so harsh about the whole reverse dieting process and the process of, I don't like the terms diet and reverse diet as much as I've said them a few times in this podcast. I prefer it as adjusting your nutrition to suit your goals. And what I mean by that is if you are, say, going on a holiday and you want to drop a little bit of fat for that, then having a plan in place for that and adjusting your macronutrients around that. But then as soon as you come back, making sure that you would then adjust and bring your calories back up and all of these sort of things. So it's like you're just cycling your nutrition, but at the same time, doing mini cuts all throughout the year isn't going to help the long term. So you might say, look, I'm going to have a whole year where I don't go into a caloric deficit, where I'm going to aim to keep my calories up at a good level, where I'm feeling good, energetic, and maybe having a weight that you're going to try to hang around. And then after that period, once you've brought your calories up and up and up, then you're like, okay, I'm in a good place now. So let's try now a very slow, non-aggressive deficit and try to keep, cardio and everything like that to a minimal, and training, not overtraining. So I hope you enjoyed this little podcast on more to do with not being so aggressive with mini cuts and, trying not to diet all the time. I think people just ruin their gains and ruin their potential by trying to diet all the time, always being in a deficit, always looking shredded, always doing X, Y, and Z. And I can guarantee you that 90% of the people that walk around completely shredded on social media or day to day, or people you see in the gym, probably don't feel super healthy all the time. You've got to look at it from this point of view as well. So make sure that, remember, what you see on social media also isn't reality. People, I'm sure, don't walk around looking peeled all the time. They probably are posting old photos, or they're having times in their life where they are bringing their calories up. Some people are outliers and genetic freaks, unfortunately, so there is a little bit of that as well. But we don't want to blame genetics for certain things at the same time. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And as I said, I will be running this really cool new 6-month program. It starts in a couple of weeks, but there is no rush to start. You can kind of start at different stages. So there is no stress there as well. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm only going to allow people to do it that fit a certain bill. So you have to have been someone that is maybe been in that cycle, like I said before. You've struggled with bringing your calories up, you always gain weight when you bring your calories up, you've dieted a lot, you have no idea where to go, and you don't want to be here forever, but you don't know where else to go. So they're the kind of people that I really want to help along the way and help in this journey now. Obviously, I still love working with competitors and my lifestyle clients and stuff, but they're the ones that really need it, that need that real help to get out of that vicious cycle that we're going to try and obviously break through. And that's why the program's called Breakthrough and the podcast too. It's my message and my passion and what I believe in, and it's what I want to be known for in the fitness industry moving forward. So if you know of someone or you think someone would be a really good fit for that, then be sure to get them to email me. And I hope you enjoyed this episode and podcast, and I hope it really gets you critically thinking about maybe your year ahead, not just the next few months, and where you see yourself going in terms of improving that metabolic health, improving your overall health, and just how you view your body as well. So have an amazing day, and thank you for tuning in.